So the next northern saint I'd like to talk about is Saint Oswald. Now, like Edwin, he was also a king of Northumbria. Oswald is probably the most famous ruler of Old English or Anglo-Saxon Northumbria. There are still civic centres, charities, other buildings named after him in this area, and he's well remembered. Oswald was Edwin's nephew. His mother, Acca, was Edwin's sister, but his background's a little more complicated than that. His father was Athelfrith, the ruler of Bernicia, who had forced Edwin into exile when he was a young man. At that time, Athelfrith had married Edwin's sister, and Oswald was the eldest of the at least 8 children that they had. So for the bulk of his youth, Oswald lived in exile during the reign of his uncle Edwin. He lived in Scotland in the kingdom of Dalriada, where he was baptized by the monks of Iona and adopted the teachings and beliefs of the Irish Church. When Edwin was killed in about the year 633, Oswald returned to Northumbria. At that time, Cadwallon was ravaging the kingdom. Bede tells us that he spared neither old nor young, but put to death everyone who spoke the English tongue. Now, Oswald's elder brother, Eanfrith, had seized control of Bernicia, the northern part of Northumbria, but he was put to death by Cadwallon, as was Oswich, Edwin's cousin, who had taken control of Deira. But Oswald challenged Cadwallon to battle and won a decisive victory at the Battle of Heavenfield. Cadwallon was killed, his followers fled, and seeing as he was the heir of both the Deira and Bernician lines, Oswald was accepted as king of all Northumbria. And after his victory, Oswald wanted to reintroduce Christianity to Northumbria. Both of the kings that had followed Edwin had fallen back to paganism. So he sent for a bishop, but he didn't send to Rome or Canterbury, as Edwin had done. Instead, he went north to Iona, where he himself had been baptized, and asked the elders to send a bishop to baptize his people and bring them to the faith. Now, the first man they sent was a very stern priest who had no patience for the English and their pagan ways, and he failed. They rejected his teachings, and he was sent back to Iona, where they realized they would need someone a bit more patient and a bit more gentle to sway the Northumbrians over. So they sent Aidan. Now, Aidan was very humble, very devout priest, and when he first arrived in Northumbria, he couldn't speak English. He didn't know anything of the Anglo-Saxon tongue. So Oswald acted as his interpreter, and he gave Aidan land to set up a bishopric, which he did on the island of Lindisfarne, perhaps in imitation of the island of Iona. And together the king and the bishop travelled Northumbria preaching and converting people slowly but surely to the new faith. I believe in Grasmere, in the Lake District, there's still a local tradition which recalls Oswald and Aidan coming there to preach the new faith. And like Edwin, Oswald was very successful in his dealings with the other English kings. He was also a Bretwalda or over-king. And he ruled very successfully for 8 years until in 642, at the age of about 37, he was brought to battle by the king of Mercia, Penda, at a place called Maserfield, where he was defeated. And as the enemy soldiers began to circle in on him, Bede tells us that Oswald's final words were, "Lord, have mercy on their souls," praying, of course, for the souls of his army, even as he died. And he was quickly venerated as a martyr and a saint, and there are a lot of miracles associated with Oswald throughout Europe, where he's had a huge cult during the early Middle Ages. But Oswald's story brings us on to Aidan, who we'll talk about next